My name is Bill Stagg. I run and operate a small commercial bee outfit, Sweet Acre Apiaries. This is the Shuswap. We're right in Tappan Valley right now, a few minutes out of Salmon Arm. And yeah, I've been running that for, I guess, 4 years now. It's been a fun growth process. Yeah, and then I work for the Ministry of Agriculture and Lands as a local inspector for the area. I've been doing that. That's my 4th year as well this year. Oh, I think what you don't know, you're scared of. That's very natural for humans of all kinds. And that's the biggest thing. People think about bees and they think about being stung and they think about allergic reactions and everything else. I always like to tell people that more people in the States die from lightning strikes than what they do from bee stings. Well, all the bees in North America that are being used are from Europe, so there's no truly North American honeybee that exists. What I have in my stock, they're wonderful mutts, Heinz 57 breed, I guess. In the late 70s, early 80s, BC did a big push under John Corner, who at the time was the provincial apiarist, and they wanted to become self-sufficient in stock production, produce their own stock and not rely on the States or offshore for queens. So one of the guys involved in starting that, his name was John Gates, and he lives in Armstrong, not too far from here, and I worked for him for a few years. And basically they took commercial stock from the big producers around the world and wintered them in the Vernon area and monitored them and chose basically the best performers, those that built up well, ones that produced honey, nice temperament, and continued that process ever since. So the lion's share of my stock comes basically from that. Well, you know, it's a mixed bag, and I don't want to speak against any of their stocks in particular. I know the queen producers in New Zealand are very, very smart people, and same with Hawaii, a lot of good beekeepers out there. Throughout the years, with so many different projects that have been done, it's time and time again it shows that local stock does outperform imported stock. It's tough when you're getting packages, especially from down under. Those bees are getting ready for winter down there, and we move them across the globe. When they're going into fall, coming Christmas time, well, in a sense, down there, it's a pretty good shock for them to be transported around the world and then expected to perform in an environment that they weren't raised in.
Yeah.
So that's the big concern about that, I guess.
How do you ensure, like,
there's a lot of different stock that went into the stock that I have. I use basically an open population mating system that Harry Laidlaw basically came up with out of California many moons ago. There's nothing really new about it. Basically I select breeders, the best performers from my different bee yards, and I have yards set up from Grinrod to Chase, which is quite a good distance. And I bring them all into a mating yard, and I set up my starters and finishers and raise cells. And when I raise cells out of, say, Grinrod, and those cells are going to be transferred over to Chase and mated, open mated in these colonies. Like these units you see here, some of them they have no queen. So we're in Tappan, so I'm going to take queen cells from my breeders that weren't in this yard last year and then introduce them here.
Okay.
So that ensures a lot of variation in the stocks.
now what are your
I think it's wonderful. I think beekeeping in itself is a very meditative practice. It has wonderful calming effects. I think there's been so much research done with the benefits of, you often hear about these farms where they take troubled teens or whatever and introduce them to courses and things of that sort. And I think beekeeping is a wonderful thing that can be done in an urban setting. We have hives in our front yard. I'm not even sure if we're supposed to, but we do. And yeah, our neighbors love it because their plum trees are heavy and their flowers are pollinated. And I think one advantage to urban beekeeping is more and more cities are passing laws restricting or prohibiting use of different chemicals for controlling weeds and whatnot. And you have so many flowers in a city that I think the bees will do quite well.
Yeah. So you mentioned
all hives have the varroa mite. There's a few spots in Vancouver Island or northern BC. Some in northern Saskatchewan doesn't have it. For all intensive purposes, when you start beekeeping, you have to know about varroa. You will have it. And I know the first few years I was keeping bees, I didn't even feel like I was going to bee meetings. I felt like I was going to mite meetings because that's all they talked about. I thought, well, I'm here to talk about bees, not about these crazy mites. But it's something that you can still keep bees very successfully with varroa. But you have to understand a lot more about the biology of the bees and also of the mites themselves as compared to 20 years ago. You'll often hear people say before the mite came over there was a lot more bee havers and not beekeepers. Whereas now with varroa and the pests that we have, it's flushed those bee havers pretty much out because if they don't know how to tell the difference between a hive that's succumbing to pests and a healthy colony, they're going to lose. For several years now, I've been using exclusively formic acid. It's an organic acid. It's found in honey, which why I got quickly sold on it. Again, you have to monitor the colonies and see how they're responding. The one thing about formic acid is it is quite weather dependent. So if the weather isn't right, you have to time your treatments according to what the weather is. Another thing about formic I like is there's no residual effects in the comb, and it does not impact drone development or a lot of these other things like the harsh chemicals do. And those pesticides build up in the wax over time and can be quite detrimental to the colonies. In fact, that's another big part of CCD, I think, is these chemicals that the beekeepers, we love to point our fingers at everybody else, but beekeepers have been dumping the same stuff in their hives for 20 years now. And the environment that we expect those bees to live in can get to the point of being toxic to the bees themselves.
Yeah.
So